Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen and councillors. Can I welcome you to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting, which is being held on the 17th of October 2024. The microphone sounds very loud. It sounds like I'm normal. Okay. We are live webcasting this afternoon. So I must remind members to use their microphones and remember to turn them off when not speaking. And hopefully councillors will remind me to turn them off when I've stopped speaking as well. Now on to the agenda items. Item 1, apologies, please.
Chair, I haven't received any apologies, but I do note that Councillor De Winter is joining on Teams. Thank you.
And I thought you had apologies from our Vice Chair, Councillor Cooper.
Apologies, yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. So on that, can I propose Councillor Eadie as my Vice Chair for this afternoon? Do I have a seconder? Sam? Everybody happy with that, please? Hands, yes? Yeah? Okay, all right, thank you. Right, Tom, if you'd like to come and sit next to us and assist, please. Item 2, minutes of a meeting which was held on the 27th of June 2024 are a true, correct record. Is everybody happy with those? And if so, I will sign them. Everybody happy? Yeah. Item 4, to the best of my knowledge, there are no items of urgent business this afternoon. Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest that need to be declared this afternoon? No. Okay. Item 5, again, to the best of my knowledge, there are no reasons to divide the agenda. Item 6, public questions. There were no members of the public raised any questions, although we did ask parish councils and told them of this meeting, and we did ask them for questions, but we could put to South West Water, but sadly there were none forthcoming, which was a bit surprising, I would have thought, but there we are. Item 7, task and finish group updates. So first of all, I'd like to go to Councillor Rake, who is the chair of the Fusion Task and Finish Group.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start, if I may, with an apology. The Task and Finish Group was due to meet last Thursday, but unfortunately the licensing committee that preceded that overran quite considerably. My fault, no doubt, because I was chairing that one. So that meeting has been postponed and will be rearranged. To give you a broader update, the initial meeting of the Task and Finish Group, which sort of determined the approach to the work, decided on two main threads, one being a more strategic level thing of how the Fusion contract was addressing standards of leisure provision overall, and the second thread being specific issues relating to the individual centres. So we'll be proceeding on that basis. A number of visits have been arranged and have taken place to the centres. I was delighted to visit Ivy Bridge and Totnes a couple of weeks ago, and I understand other councillors have visited those as well. So pending the rearranged meeting, which, it seems that will be taking place on the 12th of December. That's possibly news to me, or I just hadn't noticed that I'd accepted that. Pending the 12th of December meeting, that's it from me, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. Local Lettings Policy Task and Finish Group, I believe we have a report back from Councillor Taylor.
Chair, just as an update, the local letting policy task and finish group have met. They have made some recommendations. A report is being pulled together by officers, and that will go to the next exec meeting for their approval.
Thank you very much for that. Item C, hunting on council-owned land task and finish group. I understand the first meeting of that will be held on the 24th of October, but members were still looking for a chair. So hopefully you as members requested that task and finish group to be set up. Is there anybody wishing to be chair? And it'd be good if we could find the chair this afternoon, please. I thought you would like to do that. No,
I'm sorry. I think
quickly second.
No. I understand. I understood that when we first meet, we'll then decide a chair between us. So.
But so far we've had no one even put their name forward. So it would be just good to have someone to put their name forward. Okay, item D, procurement strategy task and finish group. The date for that meeting that has been requested by the Ordnance and Governance Committee, and that date is to be set up and that arranged in the future. Item 8, executive forward plan.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry. Can we have nominations for that group? Which members would like to? Does anybody wish to put their name forward at this meeting? Yes, no?
Hello, me again. Sorry, Chair. I did ask about this in the meeting this morning of Audit and Governance, because in the Audit and Governance Committee we'd asked for an officer to come and outline what we wanted from this task and finish group. The comment from in the meeting this morning was that an officer wasn't necessarily available, but I think Steve might have been about to say something then. And perhaps there wasn't as much of an urgency because the government implementation of this has moved. However, the Audit and Governance Committee this morning felt that actually there were other elements of the request, including a sustainable, what's the wording? Sustainable procurement policy that we still wish to explore. So we're quite keen to see that get going. And I would be happy to be on that task and finish group as a start for today.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else from this committee wish to put their name forward at this stage? No. Okay, well, Councillor Dennis can chair the meeting, and I'm sure we'll come back with a very good report. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to the item 7B, actually, the local lettings policy. Whilst it was a request from the executive, I still feel that as a task and finish group of this committee, the report should come back to this committee first before it goes to the executive. So I would suggest that we ask for that report to come to the next committee meeting before it goes to the executive. I think that's good practice.
Everybody happy with that? Okay. All right, thank you. Right, going back to the item 8, the executive forward plan. Everybody has seen the executive forward plan. Is there any issues or anything which to be brought forward? No. Sorry.
It's okay. I just noticed on that executive forward plan there is a draft procurement strategy going to be presented on the 23rd of January. So I don't know if that's still the case, in which suggests that perhaps we should have the task and finish group before that. Perhaps that's been delayed.
I
Steve?
don't believe, I think it is the 23rd of January or 21st of January. So yeah, I agree. The task and finish group needs to make. Can I just make a general observation, please?
Of course.
And sorry to be seen to be lecturing you all, but the task and finish group function of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is really important. And I know, we've struggled to sometimes for genuine reasons arrange meetings and get members on those committees, and I realise that members work and so on, but it's really important that members support the task and finish groups. So I would encourage, whilst procurement may not be I wasn't looking at you, I was just thinking, what word can I not say? Might not be the most interesting topic for some people. It's still a really important function for the council. It's one of the key things that we have got a statutory obligation to in terms of getting best value for the public purse. So I would encourage members to embrace it
Thank you, Steve. So we've got 2 members. Simon, would you like to join it?
Yeah, I held back earlier, Chair, because I'm not quite sure that I'm a sort of full member of this committee. So,
Well, any member of the council,
in which
really
case
can.
I would be happy to join.
And also we've got Councillor Penfold that's volunteered, so that's 4. So I think that's more than enough, isn't it? So, Steve, thank you very much for your wise words, because it obviously did an awful lot of good. Thank you.
Thank you for the compliment, Chair. It's the first time someone said that for a long time.
Oh, Steve, I've always said that to you. You know that. Item. Now you've thrown me. Item 9. We've work programme, annual work programme. Everybody has seen copies of that. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah. I'll go to Councillor Dennis just in case. No, we're okay. Item 10. We've got there. Can I welcome Louise Wainwright, the chair of the Avon River Champions? Can I thank you very much for coming? It's very much appreciated. I've already reminded you you've got 15 minutes, and if you take longer than that, Amelia will tell me to keep you quiet. But can I thank you very much for coming? I really do appreciate it. We did invite a number of groups to come because we think it's really important. But we've got South West Water here, but we all are councillors. We all live in the South Hams. We care about our rivers. We care about our environment. And this is a very, very important issue. And that's why a year ago I asked for this to come forward and to ask for us as South Hams Council to question South West Water. So it's really important that you came, and I really thank you very much for it. I come from a long way away from you, down on the Dart, but it's all the beautiful South Hams. So can I thank you very much for coming, and we've got a copy of your presentation. If you'd like to start, and I'm sure members are very delighted you're here.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity. So yes, I'm Louise Wainwright, Chair of Avon River Champions. It's a small catchment community group, but we do also lobby and have been involved in catchment communities in other parts of Devon. I think that we're here because we're not comfortable about the asset management that South West Water have over their assets within South Hams. And actually the asset management plan, which some of the people listening into this meeting may not really fully appreciate, is a planning process that takes place every 5 years, and we're just on the cusp of the next one. So thank you. What I'm going to do for you, which I hope will be helpful, is first of all, I'm going to actually ask South West Water, who I'm really pleased that they're here today, exactly which assets in South Hams have they included in the asset management plan number 8, which starts next year. And that will actually cover the 5-year investment programme over the next 5 years. I'm also going to present to you the reasons for not achieving good in all of the water bodies in South Hams. And I have personally, manually sifted through all that information so that it can be presented in a way in which we can all look at it and see what we have to do with it. And in particular, I've looked at the numbers of hours of sewage overspill that have occurred in every single South West Water asset in South Hams. And I've done that by looking at the Rivers Trust poo map, which I'm sure you've all looked at. And also the last thing, I'm going to suggest a blueprint for moving forward in a constructive manner. So the South West Water Asset Management Plan goes before Ofwat, and I'm going to ask South West Water, as they're here, what wriggle room do they actually have? Because they have to present the AMP8 plans, their financial plans for the next 8 years, to Ofwat, and they decide what they're allowed to spend it on. And of course, we all end up paying for it because we're the customers, and the money has to come from somewhere. And that's why Ofwat is involved in this, because they don't want customer bills to go too high. But Southwest Water and most of the other water companies in the United Kingdom didn't even reach their own targets for performance criteria. They failed, and they failed on two really important issues. One was managing pollution incidents, which is why we're all a bit annoyed. And the other was, surprisingly, with treatment works compliance. So they failed. I just want to remind everybody that the Water Framework Directive, which is not actually mentioned in the asset management planning, actually still states that we must have good ecological status of all our water bodies by 2027. So it seems to me like that's not far away. So we need to generate a sense of urgency about what we're doing, and that is only within 2 years of AMP8 starting. So the Environment Agency looks at the reasons for not achieving good. Thank you. I looked at all of this and I discovered that 49 of our water bodies, 8% were of poor ecological status, 51% moderate, and 41% good. Something that hasn't been mentioned, and the other polluters of our rivers are not here today, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that when you analyse that data, 59% of the reasons for not achieving good are not Southwest Water. They actually are agriculture. And 41% is Southwest Water in 29 of our water bodies. So we need to know, like, how bad is it? And I think that the way forward on that, and this is what we're suggesting in our blueprint project, is to look at eDNA analysis. Please go to the next slide. And eDNA looks at where did the pathogenic bacteria, the Enterococcus and the E. coli, where did it come from? Did it come from us, humans? In which case it's Southwest Water's fault, and we have some blame there too. Or did it come from a cow or a sheep? So we can actually, if we do this, we can actually discover how bad is it? Is it unsafe or is it just elevated? And where did it come from? We don't have that information now. And if we're going to make a plan, we need it and we need to pay for it. Thank you. So you've seen this. This is South Hams District Council. We had 70,000 plus hours of sewage overspills. That's why our council declared that we had a vote. We had a vote of no confidence. It's why we're all annoyed. But I looked a little bit deeper at that. Please, can we have the next slide? There are various reasons for overspills, and these are stated. I clicked on every single poo dot on the Rivers Trust map, and I manually downloaded this information, and possibly Southwest Water have it more readily to hand. But what I found was there are three main reasons for this sewage overspill. One is what they call performance infiltration, which basically means, correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues at Southwest Water, water is coming into the pipework from outside the pipe. And that's a problem. It's infiltration, and it makes a bigger volume come down the pipe, and then it doesn't fit in the tank and it comes out into our rivers. Now, Southwest Water, although I say they failed to meet their own performance criteria, in AMP7, they were the best performing water company in the country in relation to curtailing infiltration of their systems. However, you see there on the slide, there are 9 Southwest assets where that was the reason given for high spill counts. Can we have a look at the next slide? So what my question to Southwest Water is, what is in the plan, the AMP8 plan, with regard to these 9 assets, and how are you going to curtail this performance infiltration? And I think we need to engender some sort of collaboration here, because there are lots of issues involved in all of these, and I think that households, local government, farmers and businesses have an opportunity to collaborate to solve this problem. Thank you. The other major one is hydraulic capacity, which basically means it's not big enough. And what I found was that there were 10 South West Water assets, which are on the slide, where hydraulic capacity was identified as the reason why we had these high overspill hours. Next slide, please. So my next, and I just need to remind everybody that in the Water Industry Act, sewage companies are obliged to provide additional treatment capacity as and when required. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And I also found out that Severn Trent Water actually provided readily available information, it's described as, with regard to treatment works within their council geography. And I would really like to see South West Water providing us with something very similar. And this is readily available information that they already have. It does not require some research project and engineers to be involved to measure hydraulic capacity. That would enable South Hams District Council Development Management Committee, you can see the headings there. It's possible to look at what is the estimated spare hydraulic capacity of water treatment work. So if you're actually deciding, yes, let's build another big development at the top of Kingsbridge, without looking at the spare hydraulic capacity and how many households can they have. Because I have been told that even though South West Water is not a statutory consultee, that they do sometimes make recommendations to planning authorities. And I would like to see much more of that happening. I would like to see it always being part of the assessment criteria. And as I've been told by Severn Trent Water, it's readily available information. Thank you. So my question is, in relation to these assets, South West Water, what is the plan for improving the hydraulic capacity of these specific assets within South Hams? And again, what can we do to help in the meantime? Next slide, please. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the reasons given for high spill counts are ongoing investigation. And I'm pretty alarmed at this. I did raise the matter before at a South West Water meeting, and I was told that the reason for ongoing investigations is we have to do huge amount of research and modelling. And anyway, my question is, what evidence is there in your AMP8 investment plan that this is not a euphemism for it's on the back burner? Because maybe we don't actually want to admit that the hydraulic capacity is inadequate. Are there fine implications for that admission? Next slide, please. So now we're moving on to AMP8. Ofwat has told us that all the water companies that we must reduce the harm from storm overflows. They put a huge amount of money into that in the budget. These assessment management plans have not yet been agreed by Ofwat, and the water companies are asking for the determination to be delayed until January, because they've put forward plans for asset improvement, and because Ofwat don't want our bills to go through the roof, they're already going to go very, very high, much higher. They've curtailed the amount of investment. So I would like to understand from South West Water, what wriggle room do they actually have? And what focus is going to be on our assets in South Hams? What reassurance can they give us? Next slide, please. So the various things, smart meters and rain butts, behaviour change, that's something that community groups and South Hams District Council can have a hand in. And AMP8 will focus on nature-based solutions. And we have many farms in our locality and volunteer groups like Force for Nature who want to help farms in particular with this. And it could also be part of our engagement with South West Water. Thank you. So Blueprint, Avon River Champions have teamed up with Friends of Salcombe Kingsfish Estuary and Sustainable Black Orton. And we had letters of support. Thank you, South Hams District Council and Riparian Parish Councils. Thank you also to South West Water, because we had a letter of support from them, and the South Devon Catchment Partnership. We applied to the Water Restoration Fund for £138,000 to design a local catchment plan that would enable all parts, district council, parish councils, farms, landowners, businesses and South West Water to come together, look at the actual detail of the problems, recognise that we need to sort something out before 2027, never mind the end of AMP 8 in 2030. We've got to get a wriggle on here. And so anybody who wants to know more about that can look on our website. Thank you. Next slide. So basically it's a cross-sector collaboration and looking at the detail of the data that we already have. If people want to dig deeper into the data that I've presented here, if you look on the Avon River Champions website, on the home page, look under water quality and click the full report, which I hope that all members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee received. But it will give you the click links all in one table for every single water body in South Hams. And it's possible to identify the priorities as local people who have a local vested interest in sorting out the problem. I'd like to see a little bit less of the finger pointing and a lot more of the joined up thinking and collaboration, because if we don't do that, we're not going to get anywhere. Next slide, please. So I know I need to hurry up a bit here. Am I? So
People tell me, but you're fine.
Okay. So the process of the blueprint will actually share catchment data with stakeholders. So I'm not confident that the people who need to know the detail of the catchment data, where is the pollution coming from, I don't think they really know. So we need a process of making sure that the relevant stakeholders know the detail. We have plenty of experts within our South Hams. We have South West Water themselves, they're experts in their field. We have South Devon Catchment Partnership, which includes a lot of very able organisations, all of which have got a history of working in our catchments. So we have an extraordinary resource here. We just need to bring them together. And then the expert panel can review the data. I suspect that very many of them haven't seen it all in one place before, but we now have it in one place. And then identify priorities along the catchment where we could look at that farm or that South West Water asset and consider the various interventions, which could be quite simply nature-based solutions, like a zone where you don't allow animals to come down to the river, or perhaps some nature-based solutions to allow South West Water overspills not to go straight into the river, but perhaps through some reed bed or something like this, and local farmers could be paid for that environmental benefit that they could offer South West Water. But then, of course, once we've designed it, we have to cost it. Can't do anything without money, obviously. And so the process, once it's been determined, designed by the stakeholders and the expert panel, would then need to be costed. And then we need to get on and do it. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's it really. I feel feel a sense of outrage that it's been allowed to get so bad, and also that the fish, hey, the fish don't get a vote. And the aquatic insects, they don't get a vote, do they? They don't get a say in anything. And it wasn't really until it got so bad that people had to think twice before they actually got in and swam in the river. You know, that's not good enough. So, yeah, I have a great sense of outrage about it because I value the environment and I'd like to see all players, landowners, agriculture, district councils, planning departments, Southwest Water. I'd like everybody and households. I'm really trying hard only to do poo, pee, and paper down my toilet. You know, we've all got a part to play, so I'd like to see us do that. That's the end.
Can I thank you very much for a very informative and very, dare I say, an enjoyable presentation. I really do think it was very valuable that you came this afternoon. I really appreciate you coming. I'm going to almost suggest, if you can, to stay with us for the Southwest presentation and questions to us. And I'm also going to see whether it is possible that perhaps at the end you could maybe raise one or two questions. I don't know whether I would be allowed to do that. Well, they say it's at my discretion, but you know, these people are far more powerful than I. But if we could perhaps do that, and you don't have any objection to that, because I think it's working together that is so important to actually achieve the way forward for this. So thank you very much. And if you'd just like to move along the the row as it was, but thank you very much. Thank you. So we now move to the main presentation, the main section of our meeting today. Would the members from Southwest Water like to join us at the table? We have Stuart Madison Pilcher, Head of Public Affairs. We have Helen Dobby, Head of Environmental Performance, and Richard Adams, Head of Networks, who will provide us with a brief presentation. We've got your presentation here. We've looked at it, and we're going to ask you the main three questions of why we wanted Southwest Water to come back to this overview and scrutiny meeting. I just need to welcome Helen back to South Hams District Council. Some of you may know Helen. She worked here for many years at South Hams. Unlike Steve, she hasn't aged as well as Steve. But it's really nice to see her back.
Wrong way round. Wrong way round there.
Well, I always get, if I do it the right way round, you know it's not me. So, you know, welcome back. I will move on. I always dig a hole, as Sam will always tell you. But thank you for coming, and that's very much appreciated. So you have given the presentation, which we've seen there. We don't wish you to go through the whole presentation, because what we actually want to do is to ask you questions. Members of the council have asked us questions, which we're going to put to you. But also, I just want to read out, to a certain extent, the three main questions which were raised at the July meeting of the full council. And this was unanimously supported by the council. I can't remember the date because time flies. 25th of July. It did seem an awful long time ago before when we started to arrange this. Number one, why South West Water continue to pollute our rivers, other watercourses and marine environment through storm overflows, leaks and poor management of the sewage system, and what measures are being taken and when to cease all polluting activities in our rivers and our watercourses. Now, some of you will know I live in Kingsware. I had a number of residents yesterday, and I didn't want to, but I am going to raise it because it was a local issue and I'm not supposed to be parochial. But we did have a sewage outflow in Waterhead Creek yesterday. I actually said to the residents I didn't think it was because there was water coming off the fields, but I was correctly put in my place that someone felt it was, and I've had confirmation today that it was. So this is ongoing, and how are you going to start to really prevent this happening in the future, because it really isn't acceptable. Helen, do you want to answer that one?
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the environmental performance assessment metrics, it's probably worth just reminding members the areas which we are assessed on. So you're absolutely right, pollution incidents, categorised 1 to 3 is one of those areas, serious pollution incidents, permit compliance, which is the parameters around our discharge compliance around about 350 of our treatment works, our self-reporting of pollution incidents, the delivery of our National Environment Programme, which is called the WINEP programme, and our supply demand balance index. So they are the things that as a water company form our metric set, which gives companies their star rating. And one of the reasons that we have my role at South West Water, it's a new role in the last 12 months, is because we do absolutely recognise the focus on performing better in the areas around pollution incidents. The previous presentation mentioned our compliance performance last year and how we improve our number of storm overflow discharges. So we've got an ambitious programme around all of those areas. The largest investment programme that the company has had to date. We welcome the conversation about how we collaborate and how we work with key stakeholders, and within the presentation pack there are a number of slides that look at how we can do that, how we can work with other groups and stakeholders in communities and areas so that we are doing the right things in the right catchments in the right way. We've got lots of different types of infrastructure within the region, but just within one council area we're going to see lots of different catchment types. We're going to see lots of different issues around assets, and what we need to be able to do is to work collectively to understand the catchments, put the right interventions in place. We heard a little bit in the last presentation about the preparations that are happening now around the next AMP. So we have apologies today from Mark Worsfold, who I'm going to need to take some of those questions away to and bring back, because one of the things that we're doing at the moment is answering Ofwat questions around AMP submissions, as are all the other water companies. So it's getting down into the detail of those programmes and that spend, and it is about how we prioritise those, how we do that in the right way, in the right place for the right outcome. Where we have individual cases and we can understand the catchment issues, the community issues, we are reacting as quickly as we are able, and we will continue to do that. So we want that dialogue, we want to understand where we can make those improvements. And we talked, previous speaker talked about prioritisation of work programmes, and for us as for yourselves, that is something that we are constantly working through.
Members, I'm going to ask you, do you think that was an answer to that question? So I'm going to ask one of you who feels, Simon, you felt that the answer wasn't good enough?
Thank you. Well,
sorry, Helen, I don't mean to be rude.
Maybe it would assist us all if we could bring the question back up. But there seem to be a number of elements, including why it continues and when it will stop. And I didn't really hear an answer to either of those, which might be because I'm hard of understanding. But if we could, so yes, why do you continue and when will it stop, just to simplify things?
So I think in terms of the why, we recognise that we have a enormous asset base, and we have a number of ageing assets. So we recognise that we have got a programme of works that is going to extend over a number of AMPs as we go forward. So, and we talked about the AMP programme being our spending chunks. So it is about prioritising the most, most urgent and important jobs early in the programme and working through those. There are a number of whys in terms of storm overflows. I think the slide deck try to explain what a storm overflow is for. So it is a system where a storm overflow works as an outlet valve in terms of severe weather. So it stops, it stops people's properties from flooding. It's a process that is intended to do that. However, the company commitment is to reduce storm overflows.
Okay, thank you. I think it would be very good to actually see some sort of timescale for that,
Yes.
which I'm sure you'd like to give us as well. But I think that would be really important because we just things go on and on and on. So, Councillor Perswell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for explaining. It all sounds a bit sticking plaster to me. The ageing infrastructure has been recognised, so surely that's an ongoing analysis of infrastructure. It just seems it's been recognised, but it's infrastructure does age. I wondered if there had been a process in place prior to this enlightenment to check on infrastructure continuously, because that at the moment it just seems a bit sticking plaster with respect. Thank you.
So, Chair, that's right, it's okay. If I could go back to the previous comment, I think having listened to the introductory presentation, I'd suggest that there are a series of conversations that we now need to have, and with asset colleagues, so that we can start to put some timeframes and parameters around our capital intervention programmes that answers that question in a more solid way, but with the right detail around the right sites, etc. Which I don't have in front of me now, but we can certainly, that's certainly something that we should be looking to do. Point
I think that would be very, very important.
Yeah.
So absolutely. We could feed that all back into our communities, because I'm a county councillor for Compton, and we had a meeting recently there, and we still weren't given a proper time frame for that work to take place. We keep on being promised. Councillor Hodgson?
Oh, Chair, I don't think I've yet answered the
second
question.
Sorry.
I was going back to the one before.
I was being talked to, so...
I just wanted to pick up on that point around, you're absolutely right. Yes, there is a continual programme of maintenance in terms of checks, capital schemes, etc. What we also now have as well is our drainage and wastewater management plan, which looks at longer term, the longer term aspect of wastewater. And that all of these documents, we've got a link page at the end of the slide deck, which can direct everyone to all of these documents. So they are all available. They set out high level ambition, but I think what I'm hearing today is we want to get into a further set of meetings which gets more into the detail.
Okay, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just grab this. Louise quite rightly said that at the end of the day, a lot of this is about money and the lack of investment that has been part of the problem. Is everything needs money. So my question now which is about how we can make the changes happen. And I know, if to be frank, a lot of it sounds like it's being kicked into the long grass, for want a better expression. But actually, have you made any changes to the dividends that you're paying your investors? Because that's where we understand so much of the money has gone. And are they not only taking a hit on their dividends, but are they actually going to reinvest back into the organisation that actually they have, sucked dry effectively, or sucked wet, whichever way you want to look at it?
Yes, thank you. I can take that question. Look, I think in terms of dividend policies, we have a long-standing dividend policy. It's important that investors can give us that money up front so that we can fix the issues that are most important to customers. Obviously, this has been a national issue. Dividends do expect returns on their investment, as anyone would. However, we are making sure that if we can get the investment from our shareholders, it will limit the bill increases. In terms of our plans for the next regulatory review, at the regulatory period, which is AMP8, PR24, 2/3 of the funding will be raised from investors, and we are trying to keep that as high as possible so that bills are as low as possible as well. But what I would say is, with respect, the dividend policy is, it is across the business, it is across the sector, and at the moment, that is the best way to raise money in terms of fixing issues for customers.
Councillor Hodgson.
If I may just come back. So you haven't, to be honest, I think you've kind of answered the question to some extent or given a context, but you haven't actually answered the question as to whether there's going to be any changes in the policy, because as we know, the investors were clearly getting a very high investment rate return, which is what has really cost. And that was at a time when investment rates were very low, in terms of the average person. So that my question was, is there going to be a change in the policy? So in fact, are they going to get less? So it's, investment in South West Water might not be such a good investment from an investor point of view, but a much better point from the point of view of the customers and the environment.
Again, with respect, we understand that there are issues and concerns around dividends. It is not the remit of the three of us, or to be quite honest, scrutiny committees to discuss dividend policies. That is an independent decision that is made by our senior leadership team and our board. However, we do try and make sure that we are as investable as possible, which means that we can be attractive to people that want to put money into the business, which means that we can fix those issues.
Right, thank you for that. I've got a list, Steve.
Right,
I've got a list, and I'm trying to go down it, but I'm just going to make a comment to that last comment. I've never had a member of my community actually come back and say South West Water actually should be paying larger dividends to their shareholders, but maybe I'm not talking to the right people. But nobody's ever told me that. Right, Councillor Bonham.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And I first want to say thank you to South West Water for coming along to the meeting. We had a motion in our council, as already been mentioned, back in July. And I think what we want to do as a council is represent the views of our residents and express a concern and ask questions, but also give you an opportunity to not only answer those, but rebuild the trust with the community. But I think that needs honesty and clarity, and that's what I'm going to look for in the answers that we hear today. With regard to Helen, I mean, your answer, I don't think we want more meetings. I don't think we want you to come back later with answers. We want answers now. And let me maybe drill down in one of the reasons why I was very happy to propose the motion to the council, because I looked at the Environment Agency Environment Performance Assessment for 2023 for South West Water. It showed that for total pollution incidents in that year, South West Water was rated red, which was significantly below target. Environment Agency gave South West Water 2 stars, requiring improvement. And the Environment Agency said that South West Water was the worst performing company in the country for total pollution incidents. It's not that you're just being poor, it's that you're being worse in the whole country. And our residents need answers as to why. And they need answers now. So, what's the explanation for that pretty terrible and quite unacceptable situation?
Which one of you would like to answer that, Helen?
I think that's one for me, Chair. We do want to build that dialogue with councils and communities, and we absolutely recognise that is not acceptable performance. What I can tell the committee is what we have been doing to improve that position. So there has been an absolute operational focus on our response to pollution. So from an operational perspective, that's been about creating task force type working methodology so that we have got the right people in the right place responding as quickly as they can. So we have looked at really tactical things, so looking at improving our alarms and monitoring systems, our resources on the ground, being able to respond as quickly as we can. We absolutely recognise how serious that is, and we are working incredibly hard through a programmed structure to be able to do that. I recognise that you say more meetings aren't necessarily the answer, but sometimes what's really useful operationally is for tactical on the ground officers to connect in with each other and have that understanding and be able to, we work, for example, we work much more closely with harbour masters, for example, in terms of being able to understand when something isn't looking right with an asset, or we've got operational staff which are increasing number of visits to assets. We've looked at planning and scheduling and work delivery in order to be able to respond. So we absolutely are taking this seriously, but the detail that we're finding in being able to have local officers speak to other stakeholders in localities is really valuable.
Perhaps if the chair would allow me, I will just ask a supplementary quickly, because it's not just that you were red last year. When I look at the Environmental Agency report, which goes back to 2011, the total pollution incidence result for South West Water in 2011 was red, which means significantly below target. 2012, it was red. 2013, it was red. 2014, it was red. I think you can guess where this is going. Every single year, you've had a red rating for total pollution incidents. I'm not sure that a task force, I mean, what I'm looking for is some recognition that you haven't done things right and that you're going to do it differently. And I haven't heard really you fully answer that. I don't see what's, as my colleague said earlier, what's going to change, and how can you rebuild trust unless you accept the errors of the past? Another example, the overall performance rating, the star rating, you're 2 out of 4. Every single year since 2011, you were 1 star, poor performing company, or 2 stars below average. You've never got to 3 or 4, like a lot of your other colleague companies have got. What's been going wrong, and how can you fix that? Because unless there's acceptance of errors, we're going to go round the same circle. Thank you.
Can I thank you very much for that? We had a good presentation from Louise, if I may call you Louise. I hope that's okay. Recognising the asset base. In the last plan, you didn't succeed, but we would really like, this council would like to know what you're planning to actually achieve in the next asset base. So we'd actually like a list of what you're actually going to do. Now, I'm going to go back to the meeting which we've had now 3 times, I think, with South West Water representatives in Compton. I know this is Sam's district council ward. I apologise, but it's also my county ward. When we went to that meeting in September, I naively went to that meeting and actually thought I'd have dates to tick off when the work, which has been expected for ages, was actually going to happen. And all we were given was pleasantries again. And, you know, we're all fed up with those pleasantries. We want to see action on the ground. Councillor McKay?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I sort of agree with all the questions that have been asked, really, because the network that has been in your control for the last 33 years, really, since privatisation, is in an appalling state, and there are various ways of measuring this. I mean, certainly Louise alluded to some of them. One of the things that I've been doing is looking at your EDM data, your event duration monitoring data, that's easily downloadable and is in the public domain. That's great, although it doesn't contain volumes, which is how you can measure the impact of outflows without volumes defeats me. I know it's not a requirement that you have volumes in there, but clearly, from the point of view of transparency, it would be very good to have that in there. One of the things that I've looked at is that just the number of outflows. So in 2018, the Environment Agency published a storm overflow assessment framework, which you'll be aware of, I'm sure, and it talks about where there is a discharges of greater than 40 times in a year, there should be an investigation as to why that took place. That's with the caveat of 3 years of EDM. But they've got different ones for if you've just got 1 year, it's 50. So, but whatever. I've looked at the EDM data, and currently in 2023, 39% of the outflows discharged more than 40 times. So it failed the test. So 39% of your network should be under investigation by all accounts, which is a pretty poor state of affairs. If it is a measure of the poor state of it. Now, you'll be aware that there's also going to be another meeting, a bit like this, but a bigger one in December sometime, and I'm in the process of collating the rainfall data for all the outflows against the durations of data that's available. But on the basis of just those very obvious statistics, it's clear to me that the network is in a very poor state, and you've had 33 years to sort this out. Now, this rather suggests that my belief is that this is not going to change because of the way you're constituted and the way you're funded. But if you believe that you can sort this out, we need an understanding. And the vague answers that we've had so far doesn't give me anyway, any confidence that you're in any position to address these problems. Can you give us that assurance? And if you can you give us some detail as to exactly how you're going to do it?
So, Chair, the storm overflow programme and the EDM investigation work is being undertaken by our asset management colleagues. So Hazel Trant and Mark Worsfold, who I mentioned wanted to be here today and would have been able to answer these detailed questions more fully. We can feed back into the committee with.
So you'll be able to give us the date of those when that work will be taking place, or the programme will be able to see that?
There are programme works, and we have a WaterFit investment, which is £330 million. So that's looking at reducing average spills to 20 per calendar year on average by 2025. So there is an absolute investment pot behind.
So you've obviously got a programme. Can we see that programme? Can members see that programme and when it's being rolled out? You'll be able to provide us with that.
That's what I will take back to the team.
Okay.
I'm picking up a number of details from today that Stuart and I will feed back and report back on.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, yes.
A question about volumes. Now, a lot of the permits for outflows will include volumes as to the amount of discharge you're allowed to do. And clearly, if you're discharging a small amount into a stream, that can have a big impact. But if you're doing it into a big river, it has a lesser impact. So the permits are designed around that and volumes. So I presume that you are collecting volume data. Why can you not make it available to the general public so that we can make a proper assessment?
So, in terms of you're right, it is the EDMs by their nature are stop-start data set. We are you'll see from the slide deck finding different ways of collecting all sorts of data in catchment at the moment. We've got the Enhanced Bathing Water Quality Programme at the moment around an additional number of beaches. It's making sure that data sets are available in the right formats and consumable ways in the right ways in terms of
So is this the information that Louise said was available from another another water board? Is this what we're talking about?
I think that data set was around water treatment works from memory from the slides, but we can.
So there are two, if I may just explain, there were two sets of different data. There was the one slide which was from Severn Trent Water, which showed per asset readily available information which all water companies have for every single one of their assets, because the discharge permits indicate what the population that asset is designed to serve. That's part of their discharge permit, and it's then possible to calculate very readily what the spare hydraulic capacity is, so that in terms of number of households. So that's one separate thing, but the other pieces of information which I presented, which were about specific South West Water assets, were basically the reasons for the high spill counts, which were given via the Environment Agency from the water companies concerned, were either hydraulic capacity, performance infiltration, or ongoing investigation. So with regard to what South Hams District Council really want, they've asked for transparency and accountability. There are two main business plans that South West Water and all water companies have to do. They have to do the drainage and wastewater management plan, and they have to do the asset management planning. Those two are regional. We're not worried, to be honest, about the region. We want to know that if that process is undertaken with due diligence, then it must go without saying that it must be a component of all the regions. So there must be, if that is a proper process, there must be a component for South Hams District Council on the asset management plan. So perhaps I'm naive about this because perhaps they just sort of make up the figures. I don't think so, because there's a lot of money involved. So if South Hams District Council want to be, and their residents want to be reassured about what you're planning to do, to me it's quite simple. Can we please have the information about the asset management investments that are going to go on in South West Water assets in South Hams? That information must exist. If it doesn't exist, that's poor business management, and it means you did make up the figures and you've just ignored us, which is not good.
So
Thank you.
I think, Chair, that is an extension of the question that we have taken away, and I absolutely reassure you that modelling does take place through our asset management team, and it has to recognise, you're absolutely right, catchment size, community. You'd also be looking at pipe diameter, sort of all of the component parts that are feeding through that model, and then you would take some modelled parameters then around your weather patterns, etc., so that you can make sure that you've got the right volume and capacity. And just the point on the drainage waste management plan, when you drill into the detail of the drainage and wastewater management plan, that looks at, for example, 510,000 metres cubed of additional storage. So you're looking at recognising additional capacity needs throughout the region. And that is supplemented absolutely by natural catchment management, working. The other area that is really important to us, and where actually we can really work together, is through the planning process and misconnections, and understanding where we have got new properties coming into the network, and we recognise, we've got an investment programme for replacing network. In the meantime, the question earlier around what are we doing differently now to reduce pollutions, for example, it's a very focused task force programme, in as much as we know that network blockages are a contributory factor to pollutions. So we are doing increased jetting so we can focus on those areas. We're working really heavily with ECAS, which is a third party who visit businesses and retail areas where we're getting problems with commercial fats, oils and greases in the network. Those are the kind of things that start to reduce our pollutions, and start to really make a difference, because nobody wants to be red in those metrics. Nobody does, and we really are committed to making a difference.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just to go back on planning, which is what Louise also just touched on as well. You're right that we are not statutory consultees. We are keen to be, as are most water companies, I believe. We've just responded to the NPPF consultation to government, which was submitted. I think the deadline was around the 26th of September last month. We have said that we'd like to be statutory consultees in that, and as part, we want to be able to help you, but if you can help us as well in pushing that as well, because I think we probably have some alignment on that.
I think everybody in this room would be fully supportive of you becoming a statutory authority, because that is so important, to actually having you ruled out of allowing Southampton District Council to refuse a planning issue for like 500 houses and you haven't got the capacity to take it. Yeah, we'd love to be able to use that as a reason to probably refuse it, but I'm sure we'd probably approve it. Well, no, we wouldn't. But, for that issue alone, that is so important, and it's just amazing that we can't do that. Councillor Oram, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple of comments that have been made already, which is worth reiterating. Worst performing, most expensive, vague, not exactly transparent. We want to rebuild trust, and we want to help you rebuild trust with your customers as best we can, and we will help you do that. It's not helped when you get comments like, it's not for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to question shareholder policy. As a reminder, we're elected here by our residents to speak on behalf of our residents about things that are very important to them. So yes, it is got everything to do with the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I would ask you, sir, to reflect on that comment. Thank you. The council does believe in collaborating with others, and we've already heard from the previous speaker, and we will definitely be supporting those sorts of ideas to make sure that we're all around the table and working on that. But I've heard the word priority a few times now. And for the uninitiated, priority is Latin. It means the first thing. So what is the first thing? What is your priority when answering these questions? Is the environment your priority? Is your customer the priority? Or is it the shareholder that is your priority? I'd like an answer to that question, please. Chairman, thank you.
So, as part of the business plan that is going through the determination period at the moment, we have 4 pillars, what we would call them. One is fixing storm overflows. Another one is affordability. The third is net zero and environmental gain to protecting the environment. And the fourth is water resilience and making sure that we have enough water and water resources. We know that the issue closest to many, if not the majority of our customers, are storm overflows. And that's why we are investing, subject to Ofwat, record amounts between 2025 and 2030 as part of the price review and the regulatory review that we're going through.
Thank you. I've got a list at the moment. Councillor Penfold, Sam.
Thanks very much. First of all, I want to say thank you as individuals for coming here, okay? And I know that you're trying to do the best job that you can, and you work for this big organisation. So I want to take the heat off you as individuals, but remind us it's the organisation we're talking about, okay? And I think that's really important to say. Right, with that being said, what I hear from you, and I feel sometimes that you guys are the smokescreen, you are the front for people behind you. And I hear things, as we're talking, we hear things like not the remit for the 3 of us to discuss the policies. I don't have that information in front of me. It's for the senior management. Somebody wanted to be here today but couldn't be here. I need to take those questions away. And these are things that we hear an awful lot. Okay, we have heard these a lot. We've had a number of these sort of sessions, and we sort of continue to hear these. And so, it's very hard because basically, I think when we talk, it's like talking about a marriage. The trust has broken down between your organisation and the residents, the population around here. And so I do understand that there is there's some goodwill there. I mean, I'm involved in Compton. I'm district councillor there. We've been doing a working group, and I see your employees coming there, and I can see their goodwill. I see they want to try and fix this problem, and it's a complicated one, okay? And they are trying. But what I see is that you're part of a bigger organisation. Sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and that it's very easy to sideswipe or push up, okay? So there are things that I think South West Water could do, and there's all the nitty-gritty that we guys have been talking about here, and our champion of the community has been talking about here, which I think absolutely needs to be happening, and you need to come back and answer those questions. But there are also other goodwill things that could be happening too within the communities too. Things like, and I'm a district councillor of Little Hempston and Malden, and we have a possibility of a bike path going through. Sorry, what?
No,
Oh, sorry, a bike path coming through. And I know this is not your remit. These are other people, other members of your organisation have been involved in that. But we've had goodwill meetings. But when it comes to the crunch, nothing seems to be happening. So there's many words that are going on. And this we see this in replicating in different ways. But there are ways that you can show goodwill to the community. So, I'll finish for that moment.
Chair, I think if I start and then if Stuart could answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. I absolutely don't see my role as being part of any smokescreen or fog. What I want to be able to do is do that organisational knitting. So yeah, I'm really aware that I've said there are a few things I need to take away and come back on, but what I don't want to do is to be a person that says that and then you don't get what you asked for back. So that is where I think we start to, if there's been a breakdown in trust, that's where we can start to rebuild it, as we take that away and bring it back and do what we're saying we're going to do. We will undertake to absolutely do that so that we can start to rebuild that collaboration.
Of course, quickly, please.
Quickly.
I absolutely genuinely think that you believe that. I absolutely genuinely think that you want to do the best job that you guys could do individually and as a little group there. But I think it's South West Water really believe that. I think we would have different people sat there, okay, than you guys. No disrespect, but I think we would. And so I think I think I might pass over to my councillor Jed if he's prepared to say something.
Sam, have you finished?
Oh, sorry, I've finished.
I wasn't going. I've got a list of people here I need to ask. I'm sorry, Counts.
Okay.
I apologise, but I've got a list here, but I can't just go straight into that.
So Jed wants to speak.
Yes, no, I realise that.
Yes.
It's not unclear what they're looking for in the summer dress challenge. They clearly represented who the designers are.
That's
Councillor Penfold, I'm aware of the cycle lane. I will write to you in the next week about it. It's a little bit more complicated. I'm getting to the bottom of it at the moment, but I will write to you in the next week. Just with an update on what's going on.
Thank you very much. Well, that might be some good news. Denise, I haven't forgotten you. Are you still there? Denise? Right.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
We haven't forgotten you. I do apologise for waiting so long.
All right. No,
I wouldn't dare forget you.
I'm away from home at the moment, and the link keeps coming and going. So I don't know. Let me know if you can't. Well, I might not hear you letting me know. But so it's not a particularly good link, and I haven't heard everything. But just to say, I've shared the concerns of other councillors I've heard and the frustrations, and one of the questions I was going to ask has already been asked. But this may have been mentioned earlier on. But I had thought that the chief executive of South West Water was going to be talking to us. I may have got that wrong, but I would have hoped that they would have, in order to answer all the questions that people want to know. Because I have heard one or two answers saying that we can't discuss this, that, and the other. It's a shame that it can't be freely discussed. The answers, that we're asking on behalf of residents, and I just wondered if that hasn't already been expressed. Why the chief executive isn't able to answer the questions, particularly in the light of the cryptosporidium outbreak we had in the summer. I would have thought, this would be really important for us to hear what she has to say on behalf of the residents who were so badly affected, and some of whom I gather are still affected and worried about using their water. So that would be one of the questions. And the other one was, and may already have been asked, and I haven't heard it, is when will we start to see some real difference? So, when can we go into the water to do wild swimming or whatever and not feel worried that we might be getting ill from, dirty water? When might we start to feel some sort of that the measures that have been spoken about will actually start to have some effect? Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Which one of you Helen, would you like to answer that?
If I can take the bathing water question, and then Richie.
the crypto question.
Crypto one?
We're going to come back to the crypto at the end of the meeting, if we may.
Okay.
So we've got some questions from councillors which we need to read out to you, but I'm going to just take 3 more questions from councillors that are here, and then I'm going to close it and then go to those questions. So if you would like to...
I'd just highlight in terms of the bathing water information that across the South Hams, 17 bathing waters, 16 of which are excellent quality, one good, and have consistently been at that quality. Also, recognising the enhanced bathing water quality sampling programme that South West Water's undertaking. I think has one South Hams water within the bathing waters, which is Bovey Sand at the moment. that's a piece of work that we're then hoping over time we can expand. It's a non-statutory piece of work, but recognising then that we can start to understand not just water quality issues around our assets, but around wider catchment issues, so that we have a much more fulsome picture as communities around recreational water use, given that that is much more a 12-month
Okay.
pursuit now.
Thank you, Helen, for that. Steve, I'm going to just let you come in because you've got a couple of questions.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to say just a bit of balance. I've been representing the District Council with the issues that South West Water have been facing in Kingsbridge. And I would say, in terms of what you said about rebuilding trust in the community, it's evident the amount of work South West Water have done and the clarity that they've explained the situation to the town council and so on. I was in the last meeting where the MP was there, and I think that's the level that's needed really across all of this stuff. I think for me though, you look at, we're still no closer to resolving that issue, and it must have cost South West Water a huge amount of money, and I think it was said that the reality from the modelling that you've done, that you basically will have tankers in Kingsbridge car park pretty much every day through the winter to effectively mitigate the risk of a sewage spillage in the quay, and that cost alone. So you're almost at the point where you're spending so much on trying to stop the issues happening that you won't have the money to fix the issues. So that was just an observation, but that's, you don't have to answer that. My question, and it's much more straightforward answer, is it was suggested by Louise that South West Water had not met its own obligations it committed to in AMP7. Is that true or not, is the first part of that question. The second part, if it is true, is there any implications from Ofwat of you failing to meet those targets? And if the answer is no, then what difference does it make what you put in AMP8? Because if there's no consequences of it, then does it really matter?
Just in terms of AMP8 and the draft determination that we had, which is a kind of half-time point, if you want to call it, in June. That was we were only one of two water companies in England and Wales that were marked as outstanding for our plan by Ofwat, which meant that it was deliverable and achievable. So we have put together a credible plan to get things fixed. And as I say, we were one of only two that was deemed to be outstanding. I think that's why we've got confidence, and I hope as we work closer with the council, and I've got a number of ways that we can also do that as well. We can then help you build that confidence in us as well.
And in terms of, is there any consequences if you failing to meet the targets?
We are fined. We can be fined by Ofwat, and we have been before. I believe I will come back to you on whether we have historically or not. But there are penalties for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Denise, did you wish to come back? I'm sorry, your hand is still up.
Sorry, as I say, I'm away from home and I've not heard everything. So I'm assuming my questions were. Have I turned it off now? Is that turned off now?
That's
yes.
turned off now.
I didn't actually hear everything, so I'm assuming they were answered.
The question for crypto, we're going to discuss that at the end of the meeting. So that one is still pending. So
right. Okay. It was interesting to hear, Steve. I was going to ask about Kingsbridge as well. Steve Molyneux asked about the situation we have in Kingsbridge with the tank. We've had to have the tankers there with sewage overflows, and that, as Steve suggested, was going to be costing a lot of money to deal with infrastructure, and that's obviously one of the major issues is upgrading the infrastructure, which is presumably Victorian in a lot of cases, and whether there's the will or the wherewithal to actually to actually do that and deal with that is a question, I guess, isn't it?
As Councillor Penfold knows, we have a tanker down at Compton most of the time as well, so we
Really?
know what the feeling's like.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to go to Councillor Eady.
Thanks.
Hello. Thanks very much. I think what we've heard clearly that I'm sure you are aware of the frustration, disappointment, and the pain that's been a result of not just more recent, but what seems like a series of episodes of the last many years. And clearly, the breakdown of trust is from that. I do have a resident who asked me to ask this question, and I don't know whether this is necessarily a helpful thing to you or not. But from the Elm Estuary to Moor group, who are an action group in the area I represent in Newton and Noss, the question is, the outreach team in South West Water is called the Engagement and Natural Solutions team. They're starting to see worthwhile connections here. How is this group influencing South West Water's approach, and do they have any bite and influence at a more senior to board level?
The answer is yes. We work closely with in the public affairs team, local government team. We work closely with the catchment management and community engagement team as well. That is then fed into plans and how else we can work with the customer communications team and the customer service team. A lot of that makes up some of the community roadshows that we've had around the region, where we have kind of market stalls. We're looking at continuing to roll that out as well, so that we can then say we've spoken to action groups, we've spoken to activist groups. We'll bring them along, we'll get them to kind of come to all of the market stalls and things, and people who have real world technical expertise on the ground on the local issues can speak to local residents and local activist groups. So it's very much a part of how we do things at South West Water, is making sure that we work with the community team.
So if I could just, so as an extension of that, why don't you invite these groups into helping control and improve the trust that exists in South West Water at a more senior level? Conversation is obviously great, and clearly from the resident Diana, who volunteers, I should say, which is the case for nearly every single one of these groups. Why not have those more integrated within the meaningful processes that are going to be useful for rebuilding trust at South West Water?
Well, I was just going to mention that there was a very well attended community event earlier this week in Dartmouth, which, as Stuart said, is a really good opportunity for customers and any interested individuals to sort of go round the market stalls and to get into detailed conversations with then the technical officers for their patch. We also have a number of sort of customer and forums, which I believe on our website, and we'll make sure it's added to the link page, people can engage with and be part of, and that's a really good way then of being able to have that voice with the organisation and the company. But it sounds as though, just listening to the conversation today and recognising that there's more we can do in this space, so we need to take that away and work out how we do that better.
Okay. Yep. Councillor Steele.
We met here about a year ago, and I think the takeaway from that meeting was, don't worry, we've got a plan. Things are going to get better. And here we are a year down the road, and I'm not really sure what the takeaway today is, other than we'll get back to you, we might have a plan. And it was said a year ago, yes, things will get better. And going to your point about the Ofwat fine last week, which said that South West Water was the worst performing authority for serious sewage leaks, more than double any other authority by kilometre of sewage pipes. So it feels like we've gone backwards since last year, both in our dialogue and the actual results of South West Water. So, again, really great to have a takeaway from today. But what we really would want is a what, how, and when of improvements. And I guess you're going to come back to us with that. And I hope that can be done quite quickly so that when we've told people, yes, we've met with South West Water, they ask us, well, what was the outcome? You know, we need an outcome. And I hope that will come very quickly.
My vice chair did question whether that was a question, but I daren't say it. So,
will it come back quickly? Then is the question.
Louise, would you like to come? Or do you want to? Do you?
Well,
Yeah.
I'd just like to say, yes, we will make sure that it comes back quickly, but I'd also like to say that, yes, there is a plan. So there is a plan and increased investment. There is increased operational work happening in all of the key areas, so storm overflows, pollutions and compliance. We need to give you the detail around that, and I hear that in terms of the assurance, and recognise that what you want to see is dates and granularity that perhaps we haven't provided today, but that is not because there is any absence of plan. There is absolutely a plan and people working behind that plan to deliver it.
I think everybody in this room is loud and clear. That's what we want, and that's what our communities want. And we've waited long enough for that plan. Louise.
Thank you. I appreciate that the asset management plan has performance criteria about wanting to, I think you said, reduce the number of combined sewer overspills to 20 per asset. Well, having looked at our because that's an average, you're talking about an average, and clearly we want the granularity and the specific information about our assets here in South Hams, and you've promised to come back to us and provide that level of detail. But when I look at 70,000 plus hours of CSOs in our assets, I'm not looking at anybody else's, and just by remembering the number of assets in the table, we're only talking about 40 in South Hams, about 40 assets. I'm just wondering how you're going to get the average down to 20. That seems like not really something that's going to be feasible. If it is, that would be amazing, but I'm not confident about that. I'm particularly concerned because I'm Avon River Champions. I'm concerned about the Dipford, the Morley, and we work very closely with Sustainable Blackawton. I'm concerned about Slapton Ley and the combined sewer overspills that go from your assets into those water bodies. They come from extremely small villages. There's only, 200 or 300 people in those villages. So it seems to me that South Hams, okay, we have got some big cities, Iverbridge, Kingsbridge, they've got a lot more toilets. But some of these little villages where our waterways, our waterways are being polluted, the capital investment required to improve the hydraulic capacity of those very small assets must be pro rata, a much smaller investment. So I'd really feel very encouraged if we could actually see as quickly as possible, because it's not something that I'm expecting you to have to go and research. I'm expecting you to be able, if you have got a plan, there should be granularity within your own business plan. I'm expecting that by tomorrow, you should be able to provide that information to the chair, who will circulate it, and we'll know whether you're going to do anything on our assets.
Well, thank you very much for that. Can I ensure that Amelia sends the questions which you asked at the beginning of this meeting are sent to South West Water, and we ask them to be answered to you, and all the councillors are copied into those answers as well. I'm trying to keep the meeting as concise as possible, and I've still got quite a few members of the public, members of the council wish to speak, which I think is really important. So if I'm going to make a decision that at the beginning of it, before this meeting, we actually asked councillors to raise questions that we wished to address you at the council at this meeting. We've all got those questions, and Councillor Lawford has got a number. Councillor Brazil has got them. Councillor Nick has got them, and Councillor Bonham has got them. What I'm going to do, if members are happy with that, is to actually send all these questions to South West Water, and instead of going through every single one, is you okay with that? Because you've got the most, I think. Is that okay? So, I was just reminded, thankfully, that we did do this similar to you about a year ago, and they weren't answered. But I think they were answered, but in a roundabout way. So, can I, if everybody's happy with that, I'll send that to South West Water, and they can answer. Is that okay, Councillor Bonham? You okay with that? Because it just makes it a lot easier, and we can just continue a touch longer. Councillor Lawford, sorry.
Is there going to be a time frame of when it's going to be answered by?
What do we think?
Yes.
Yes. No, that was an obvious. That was an obvious. That didn't need answering. What was the time frame? Who should we send these to? Should we send these to yourself? Okay. So shall we give you a week?
How many are there?
There's only a few. They're quite simple. I'm sure you'll be able to answer them in a week.
If we can come back to
Helen will do it in a couple of days.
If we can come back to you at latest in 2 weeks with an aim to get you in 1 week.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Lawford? Councillor Bonham, are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Simply just because without seeing them.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Right, okay. I've still got a couple of questions. Councillor Hodgson?
This is really quick and just to be really helpful. Councillor Oram's question about priorities wasn't actually directly answered. So may I suggest that you actually put environment first, the customers second, who will be pleased if the environment's first priority, and then the economy would be third, and that will actually work better if you look after the environment and your customers. So I would suggest that is your order of priorities. Thank you.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I did think that the 4 pillars that I think you suggested, I did think they seemed to be in the wrong order, but maybe the shareholders come before the rest of us as employee, as members of who pay your wages. Right, Councillor Yardy, do you want to come in? Still want to come at the end? Okay, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. And sorry, we're kind of flitting around a lot, but I wanted to go back to what Councillor Eady was talking about in terms of the community engagement, because I think I've got really good examples of where the engagement's been really successful, and then areas where it just seems a little bit clunky, and as you said, it just needs work. So I think a lot of these questions could be resolved if the answers were actually just on the website. So, you know, you talked about the road shows, and I can see that there's one coming up in my ward, but there isn't a time. So how am I supposed to promote that? It's in like 2 weeks' time and there are no times. So there's some information about the investment that's going into Hope Cove and the outflows there. It says there's going to be £3 million worth of investment by March 2025, but then in the description it talks about we've all, you know, in March 2023. So it just doesn't make any sense. And actually, I wouldn't have to. My parish councillors and myself wouldn't have to keep asking you these questions if it was on the website and correct. You know, I have examples in South Milton where an engineer came out with one of your community engagement officers, I suppose, and sat with us and looked at the plans, and that was absolutely brilliant. We've got some local expertise, people who've worked in your field before, who suggested he knew where the ingress was. We were told no, our modelling shows it's not. You've spent 12 months examining where you thought it was, and decided actually it's where he said it was 12 months ago. So, you know, you're kind of doing it 80%, but you're not necessarily, South West Water, not you guys obviously in particular, not actually kind of taking it away and listening. I've got another example in Hope Cove where the stability of the cliff supporting the sewage pipe between Inner and Outer Hope, you know, it needs immediate stabilising before that we've got reports that show the cliff is falling away before we have a major incident, you know, that affects the tourism, affects the health of the residents, everything. You know, we're really aware of that, really keen to help as residents and ward members. So I think, you know, I think it's just, for me anyway, actually, there's a lot of good happening, and it just kind of needs tidying up and sorting out, and actually just making sure the information on the website is correct, because then we wouldn't have to keep having these meetings going back and forth. And also, just my last thing really is if we've got questions from parishes, who are the contacts? Because it always seems to be someone different, or someone's on holiday, or someone changes their role. So is there a single point of entry?
So yes, that's something that we have implemented in the last 6 months. I will ask Chair Amelia to circulate the single point of contact email address that we have that the dedicated local government team look at.
And I thank the councillor for those individual examples, because that's really helpful in terms of being able to make those tangible improvements. So, for example, on our web pages talking about storm overflows, there's a drop down that talks about investment. We are constantly, we need to make sure that that's reviewed and accurate and correct at all times, because that's a really good go-to point to be able to understand catchments and what's happening, and we can absolutely make sure that that roadshow information is updated as well, so it's useful.
I don't know whether Councillor Yardy knew that you were in Dartmouth last week. I didn't know that you were in Dartmouth last week. Don't know whether Councillor Yardy probably did do. I didn't. Well, I was away, but when you had sessions in Kingsweb over the crypto, I was notified, and I think it'd be really good for all councillors to be notified when you're in the area, when you're meeting our residents, so that we can be there and listen with you as well. And I think also what would be really good is that all parish councils have contact details of those who they should be contacted. With the winter coming up, with the more the rainfall that we're getting and the overflows, etc., it would be a really good idea if you could just put a nice letter together or email together to all parish councils, and these are your emergency contact details and numbers that you need, or emails you need to contact. I think that would help all parish councillors that maybe are not as knowledgeable as us as county and district councillors. Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, hi. This is a slightly different question, and I want to ask you each individually. But if you each individually had influence on an operational policy for your business, what would you choose to improve people's residents' perception of your business for South West Water?
Helen, you're not normally silent. Do you want to think about it, and I'll ask, see if anybody else wants to ask the question?
Go on, Richard's going to
Steve,
go first.
you were never able to make Helen silent in the past.
That was a fantastic question.
It's a fantastic question, and I'm sat here and people are thinking, what's he doing there, because he's not talking much. I'm actually the water side of the business, so a lot of this isn't my field, so I apologise for that. In terms of the water side, you know, and what I will say, and then we're going to go on to Brixham and crypto, what I'm incredibly proud of is, and some of you guys have already recognised that, is the guys on the ground and the work that they do. And getting that work out to the general public and seeing that actually, yeah, things may not be perfect, but there is an awful lot of background work going on in the background, and a lot of effort and a lot of dedication 24/7. And that's what I'd say from my point.
Thank you, Rich. The only reason I was quiet, which is unusual, is because I was trying to think about what the real essence of it is. For me, it's about my whole career has been around environmental improvements and community, and like Rich, I see that in what our teams are doing all of the time and what our programme is aiming to deliver, and I recognise that at the moment that is not what the results are showing, but I absolutely believe that they will if we are following through the programme as we are at the moment. So for me, it's about making sure that those policies are behind environment and customer and communities at all times.
Right, I'm going to ask Councillor Bonham and Oh, sorry.
I actually did have an answer.
Do apologise.
So for me, I think it's working on the back of what Richie and Helen have said, and actually it's all fine us working on the asset base and fixing issues, but if we're not telling you, then no one's going to know. And so actually, I'm incredibly proud of the work that we do in terms of communicating. However, I know that there is more to do. There is, and that's the only way that we can build that trust with you, is to communicate with you all more. And not, I don't like to say tell our story because that sounds slightly disingenuous, but actually to give you the facts, tell you what's going on the ground and work with you, because I'm very aware that you are also the coalface of inbound inquiries from your residents, and we need to help you make sure that you can communicate well with your residents. So that's something that I'm incredibly proud of the team. However, to your point, what could we do more and better is we could communicate better with you and all tiers of local authority, members of parliament as well. And that's something that my team and I are absolutely committed at doing.
I think it was more about operational policy that is in place. What would you improve that you're not doing already? But yeah, there might not be time to answer that. So
okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Bonham and Councillor McKay, is there anything else that you wish to raise while we're still asking questions? Do you feel that we have treated the motion respectfully and in depth, or is there anything we've missed?
I'm sure this conversation could go on for hours. I'm more interested in moving on to the crypto question personally. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Bonham, is there anything else?
Yeah, well, I'm not quite sure where to start really, because I appreciate all the discussion, but I'm with Councillor Steele here. I'm not sure what the takeaway is, other than to say we're going to wait for answers, which wasn't really what I was hoping for. I'm not sure why the South West Water team need to go away and get answers, because I've got a page printed from your business plan 2025 to 30, which is 94 pages long. In that, it shows what the target is for reducing overflows from storm overflow sites. It's all there. So I don't know why the team doesn't want to tell me this. I can only conclude that this is probably wrong, or that you're not sure about it or something. My question, if I may, is one of the things that's on there, which is, when will the South West Water get a 4-star rating? What's your view on that? Because I think we need to see improvements, and otherwise I'm not sure what the takeaway is here. Thank you.
Okay, which one of you would like to answer that, please?
Yeah, in terms of our ambition 4-star, it is about meeting the reduction in pollution incidents, that the discharge compliance metric, we self-reporting of pollution incidents, delivering our WINEP, and supply and demand. So there's a suite of metrics. Our programme looks at working towards all of those to deliver 4-star. And that is what we are doing. Performance is dependent on all sorts of different factors between those suite of measures. So in terms of when will we do that, from our perspective, we want to do that as quickly as we are able. What I can't say is it will be this year or next year. It will be based on the outcome of those metrics in years.
I think that's what councillors and residents and parish councils get with a greater respect to you and politely as possible, we're fed up of hearing that. We are completely fed up of hearing that. I'm getting older, I know Steve is getting older, and we just really need to get action rather than anything else. Councillor McKay?
Yes, just a final question. I mean, as I said, I mean, the network has been in your care for 33 years now, and I think you would admit that it's in a pretty dreadful state. Do you have a view as to why it is we are where we are? Because until we have a proper understanding of that, I'm not convinced that we have a route out of the circumstances that we find ourselves in, or a convincing route. Do you have a view as to why we are in the state that we are?
I think if you look at where we were just post privatisation, there was raw sewage in the water, absolutely. We embarked on a huge clean sweep programme of something like £13 billion in the early across the 90s and the early 2000s to fix it. Now, obviously, there are many issues that we have discussed today. However, the only reason that we all know about the issues are the 100% monitoring of outflows. So, that's why we've been able to put together this kind of credible business plan where we can start to invest even more to fix the issues. But I think it's important just to look back at 33 years, as you say, what the situation was back then, which was truly awful.
Councillor McKay, quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this statement several times that it was really dreadful back in 1980. But I was growing up round about then, and I used to go tickling trout in streams. It wasn't that bad. It was actually very good. It's now, I think, the rivers are much more polluted than they ever have been, and that's why the public are aware of it. So it has got considerably worse under your management.
Right, okay, I'm going to call this section of the meeting to a close, if I may, and then we'll go on to item 3, which is really the crypto outbreak, which we had in Brixham and Kingsware. As a Kingsware resident, I don't know whether I have to declare an interest, but I did actually end up having some compensation from South West Water because both I and my partner suffered from crypto for some time during it, and we did actually make a claim, and we did eventually get some money from your good selves, which we appreciate. As a resident of Kingsware, we think Kingsware got forgotten. We got forgotten with a bigger section of Brixham. You did take an awful long time to actually start to consider Kingsware, I think. We did seem to get forgotten, particularly with the early deliveries of water. Towards the end, most of us were putting notices on our doors, please don't deliver any more water, because it was just like we could almost started selling it, which we didn't. Some of it's still in my garage. I think one of the concerns that we've got for my residents, and there's many, but was when the outbreak started at the beginning, there were really mixed messages coming out. And I do think for the first 24, 48 hours, we weren't told enough quickly enough. There are a number of residents in Kingsware and Hillhead, which is the parish of Kingsware, that are still telling me they are suffering from crypto and they are having illnesses from it that are ongoing. I do think that when you started to give the compensation out, it was a difficult process. Some of us seem to be able to get through the network quite quickly, but there was others there waiting weeks. And when they'd lost money, they'd lost wages, they'd lost height of the season. Some of them lost considerable amount of money. For Brixham particularly, not so much Kingswear, but I know Kingswear suffered as well from holiday lets in the height of the season. It was considerable. It was some considerable damage to their businesses. And I still think that you are hiding behind the investigations on this. There are lots of rumours going around on what we think caused it or what didn't cause it. So I do hope you've learnt the lessons from that. We hope we never suffer from it again, and we hope nobody else in the South Hams ever suffers from it again. But I think there's an awful lot of questions still not been answered on that. Is there anybody else that wishes to raise concerns about it or questions? I know Councillor Yardy does. He's waiting at the bit all the way through the meeting, and I've held him up for 2 hours. Does anybody? Councillor McKay. Councillor Yardy.
I'd like to actually hear the answers about how you might respond to the question on the slide, please, and then I'll respond.
Have you pulled a plug out? Sorry, technical hitch. We can all see it. No, it's there. It's there.
Okay, a lot of points there, and I know it appears that we're hiding behind, the legal procedures, but that is the truth. These events, thankfully, I've been with the water industry and with South West Water for 35 years, and like your good self, I was in the affected area, so I live in Brixham. Thankfully, these are very rare events. We don't have them very often, not just in South West Water. We don't have them in the industry, as it happens. When this broke, and there are procedures in place, as you would expect for any public health type matters, and particularly South West Water after we did all that, we worked very closely with the UK HSA. So as soon as they made us aware that there was some illness in the community, we went through all of our records, all of our sampling, and nothing threw up that there was any cause of concern at that point. But we didn't just rest there and see how that went. We put extra sampling out into the network, and that's when we found really quickly, because it was within 24 hours, I think, that we found that there was a problem in the network. And at that point, I can categorically say we went quick and we went extensive into the network to safeguard the supply. Now again, I can get that customers and alike would be concerned about that. Of course they would, but again, in terms of the complications of the supply in general, we did act as quickly as we could once we knew that we had a problem in the supply network. Nothing up until the point of getting those results back from the additional sampling that we put in place suggested we had a problem in our network at that point. The network, in terms of Kingswear and Brixham, we didn't treat them any differently, so I am surprised in many respects, because the conversations I had in the incident team at the time didn't disenfranchise either or. It was a network.
I think we just got forgotten. We felt we got forgotten.
Okay, well, I will apologise for that. That was never any intention on any of the incident team, that's for sure. But obviously, in these type of events, you have to find what the source of the problem is, and you have to deal with that. But in the meantime, obviously, we needed to make the customers aware that it was a boil water notice, and then you have to set about containing it and improving it. And whilst it did take a considerable amount of time, in actual fact, for this type of event, it probably wasn't a considerable amount of time, because we did seek advice from our peers in the industry and also internationally in New Zealand believe it or not. And actually, they've had events over there that were much, much longer. It's probably difficult words to say maybe for people to accept, but I'm quite proud actually of what we did during those weeks. Not that we had the event, but what we did to recover it. The actual response and the work that we did over those weeks to contain the incident, to install UV filtration at the reservoir at Hillhead and at the reservoir at Buoy, so it feeds Kingswear, and 6 filter installations. So we have not only UV treatment and filter installations on the inlet to the reservoir at Hillhead, we have the same at Buoy for Kingswear, and we have on each outlet pipe filters installed, and renewed an outlet main from Hillhead into Brixham under the timescales, including the flushing and the ice pigging work that we did on for every pipe on that network. I think the fact that I'm explaining it in that fashion, you can tell that, you know, all the streets that we went through and the time we did 24/7 worked at it was a good effort.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Birch.
Yes, the MP, the local MP, has repeatedly asked South West Water whether they will go to hire Brixham, Hillhead, Kingswear, and test the water in some randomly chosen houses to reassure the community that there is no crypto still present. South West Water has repeatedly failed to reply to this reasonable request. When will South West Water go and test the water? And the comment is, you need to rebuild trust with this community, and this would be the best way to do it. I'd like an answer to that question, please.
When you say test the water, so I didn't mention that we did put extra crypto testing rigs out into the network, and we continue to test at varying locations in the network. So we are continuing to test for crypto. As I say, I am a resident in the affected area in Brixham. I drink the water daily, and I'd be more than happy to go into anybody's house within that affected area and drink the water.
But in drinking the water, that's not good enough. Would you give us an assurance to this council that you will go and do random testing at houses within the area that I mentioned, and report back to this council on the results of that testing? I don't think it's just good enough to go and have a glass of water. I think it needs to be more than that. So it would be really helpful if you could give that assurance to this council that you will do random testing so that we can report back to our residents that this is happening. Can you please give an assurance to this meeting that this will happen? If you're not prepared to give that assurance, why are you not prepared to give that assurance?
I don't think at this point it's whether I'm prepared. Random sampling, the sampling from Cryptosporidium isn't go to the customer's property, get a sample of water and go away and test it. You have to put a rig into the property. You have to run that rig over at least 24 hours. So what I'm trying to explain there is sampling for Cryptosporidium isn't just a standard sample. It has to be an installation at the property. So when we did it through Brixham, because we did put samples out at varying different properties where we got permission, and we still have samples on the network that are constantly monitoring for crypto, and the results are on our website, and there are no detections of Cryptosporidium.
And are those in Kingswear as well as in Brixham?
I can't answer that because I'm not
Can
sure.
you find that out? And if they are in Brixham and not in Kingswear,
yeah,
as a Kingswear parish councillor and someone who lives in Kingswear, I would like to know why.
Yeah.
And it would go back to what I was thinking was Kingswear and Hillhead often felt forgotten.
Mr. Chairman, can I take it that South West Water are not prepared to give carry out those tests and to give the assurance to our company, and that in itself is extremely worrying?
I would totally agree with you, but hopefully within 24 hours you would come back and give us that reassurance, please. And if not,
on further random sampling.
and if not, when would you install it? Okay, thank you, Councillor Birch, for that one, because I think that's very important. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Dennis? No, you're coming in at the end. Councillor Dennis, didn't you know? That's most unusual. Councillor Yardy.
Thank you. At the Cryptosporidium meeting in Brixham, when I asked about risk management, about the number of valves that you have under your control, of thousands, you used the expression that because of the legal investigation, the answers were privileged. I'm just making sure that that point is clear, and that was the answer given at the time. However, what I'd like to do is understand or give an overview. I've heard the terms historical poor performance. I've heard the terms about lack of transparency. I've heard terms about what's happening with our priorities. I've heard quotes about openness, accountability, how to change, the speed of change. These are quotes from this meeting. I've heard that there's poor business management, or the perception of poor business management. I've heard that there's significant underinvestment. It's taking too long to get the results. And sometimes this might be in terms of years, in terms of getting to the results of why we get to how do we get to the solutions. I've just mentioned about the use of legal privacy, legal privilege to, in effect, not answer questions that we're asking. I know that there's been difficulties in the compensation payments to those that were suffered from cryptosporidium. And many of the residents have expressed that they have lost confidence, they have a lack of trust, and they're frustrated. I heard the word outrage today. So how do we create an effective change? How do we change the culture within South West Water? And that comes from the top. So my question is, would the CEO consider standing down? And in a broader sense, I've got three follow-up questions. So the CEO I would ask to consider stepping down in light of the performance. And in a broader sense to the members, I ask, do you support a public inquiry into the water industry in a broader sense, not just South West Water, but across all the areas that are affected by water supply, which is the UK? The second point is, do the members support the fact that there needs to be strengthening for the Environment Agency so that they have powers and they have teeth so that they can go in and make sure that those that have, when an error has been made, there is a correction that is followed up. And finally, would you support that if it came to it, that it was found that the investment programme was simply not good enough to get to the standards where we are, where we need to be, that there would be a potential opportunity for temporary nationalisation? So I put down four markers there. One about the CEO consider standing down, and three on a broader context. Public inquiry, similar to the Post Office, the Environment Agency, and the fact that we might have a national temporary nationalisation of companies within the water industry. Thank you.
Members, what do you? Four rather large questions. Sorry, that's four rather large questions for us. Steve, do you want to just comment? Do members feel that we should make a representation that the CEO stands down? I mean,
it's a member.
It's a member decision. Councillor McKay.
Yeah, I mean, I support everything that Jed's just said there. I'm not entirely convinced about the CEO standing down, because it'll just be replaced by somebody else who will be working within the industry as it's currently constructed. And I think that is the basic problem that we face. It does need to be nationalised. Can I just come back to a point with regard to the legalities of privileged information? Because my understanding is that in the 26th of April this year, there was a decision handed down by a tribunal that Northumbrian Water could no longer use Ofwat and Environment Agency investigations as an excuse to hide the truth about their polluting activities, unquote. And this was in the light of an environmental information request that was refused by Northumbrian Water, and it went to a tribunal, and the request was upheld. Similarly, more locally, Yelm Water Quality Group put in an information request to South West Water, and that was refused. But subsequently, the information was provided as a result of this tribunal decision. So, when at this meeting in Brixham, the claim that they can't give this any information because of privileged information, protection of privileged information, I believe that there is a precedent whereby they now should be giving that information. So can we have confirmation that that is recognised by South West Water, and the questions that weren't asked at that meeting will now be answered?
Yes, so I think there's a slight mix-up just with respect in terms of spills and that case versus any investigation by the DWI into what happened to Brixham, which I think, Councillor Yardy, you are talking about. So I think there is a difference between that Northumbrian case, I think you believe you said, and the.
The generic ruling was that you could not use privileged information to withhold information with regards to pollution incidents. And clearly the crypto spiridium is a pollution incident of some form, I would argue. And so any information surrounding that should be in the public domain and not be hidden. And why would you want to anyway?
I think, as Richie said, there are things around root cause that we cannot talk about because of the legal investigations into what happened, and that's why.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I know it's not the answer we all want, but I think it's probably the best, Councillor Mackay, we're going to get this afternoon, and perhaps if you wish to follow that up with our representatives, they can do that, and with the CEO afterwards, and hopefully get the support of our MPs. Councillor Birch, this is the last comment question.
This is really just for, it's not a question to SWW. I would just remind members that at the last full council meeting, it was recognised that your committee would be meeting with South West Water, and that you were requested by full council to provide a report from this meeting with recommendations to the next full council meeting. And therefore, I think if there is any action to be taken by this council or anything arising from this meeting that this council wishes to take further action, it needs to be contained in a report together with recommendations. As to how that report is put together, I would like to suggest I don't think you'll be able to do that in front of our guests here. I think it's probably best done outside of a formal meeting such as this, and that then a recommendation be put to full council. So I think that's important to bear in mind.
We've got 5 or 6 recommendations which we are proposed to put onto the screen in a few minutes, but we'll go through to full council for the December meeting. Steve and Amelia are just trying to put them all together, but because of Councillor Yardy's extras, they are being fastly, as much as possible, accommodated into it, and their typing is much faster than mine. Perhaps at this stage we could thank you for coming, because I think councillors have had all the information that we need, or that we're going to get this afternoon. Can I thank you all very much for coming? Perhaps the meeting, we'll perhaps have like a 5-10 minute break, and then we'll go into these recommendations, because it looks like Steve is going to have to make a few more amendments to the recommendations before we can do it. So if we have a 5-10 minute break, 10-minute break, can we thank you all very much for coming? We very much appreciate it. The comments weren't personal. They were raising the frustrations that our residents and we as your payers also feel frustrated, and you as Kingsware resident, Brixham resident, our neighbour, we all know what we are going through, and we thank you very much for coming. It wasn't an easy meeting for you to attend, and we thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to hopefully meeting you within at least a year, if not before. We will be asking you to come back to this ONS meeting in the coming months, because particularly with the crypto issues, when you do eventually come out with your report, let's hope it won't be in 2096, that you'll come forward so that we can look into that report as well. So thank you. Is everybody happy with that?
I was just going to say that we can just go straight through these guys.
Okay, all right. Well, I just thought some of the older members might need a tea break. But is everybody okay with just carrying straight on?
Because I think some of them's got to go.
Older members do need a break or don't? Oh, okay. See, we're not all as young as you. Okay, so we'll have a 10-minute break. We're having a 10-minute break. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Are you adjourning till
Right. Thank you very much for coming back. Members, we have the recommendations in front of us from this afternoon's meeting with South West Water. Do you wish me to read those recommendations out, or are you happy to read them yourself? Sam would say that because she's just checking my eyesight. I would be able to prove that I could read that far away.
Matt, sorry.
We'll have 2 minutes silence for everybody to read those. Item 3, so to prove that I can actually read it, second line says by XXXX, or maybe even an XX. When do we want to put the date in? And I'm glad Councillor Hodgson is here. Maybe she can help us with that. Recommendation 1, section 3, improve our waters so that they are brought up to the highest environmental status by, and the evidence that has been led to these decisions. What date would you like us, Councillor Hodgson, to put into that?
Chair, just so I can say it's in relation to the dates, it's for 1, 2 and 3. So the question is we want them to give us the work that they're going to undertake in the South Hams for those 3 areas by, and that's the question to the committee.
That's when they're fixing.
Well, they're not going to.
No, the 7 days one was the answer to one of our councillors' questions today.
But they should have this in place already. It's not like they need to work.
So,
on it. So 7 days, I think, is, we expected it today.
Shall we say be lenient and give them a month?
Shall we say 2 weeks?
20
Well,
28 days, within 28 days, yeah?
Committee,
Within 28 days.
next ONS committee, which is about a month.
No, because that's a bit fluffy, isn't it? Shall we say 28 days?
Yeah. No, you want it well before the committee.
Okay,
so
well.
Can read it. Yeah.
David. Just to say, of course, this is a recommendation to council, so it'll be 28 days from the date of council.
Yeah. Councillor Birch.
Yeah, just remember that this is a recommendation to council, so any recommendation, if approved from council, the time period runs from then. However, there is nothing to stop you as a committee, a separate resolution, asking them to respond to the information that you requested today within that period. In other words, that you can have this recommendation, then also you can then have a separate resolution giving South West Water whatever time you require for the various pieces of information you requested.
So we should actually have received it. So the next council's December, isn't it?
Yes.
5th of December. So we should have received it by then. So I guess the resolution is if they have not supplied it by then, we request.
So the issue you've got is they have not got their asset management and their drainage and whatever plan signed off. So they will always hide behind the fact that, well, we've not got it signed off yet. So I think, and that's what they will be hanging all of this, and that's what they've continually said. It's all based on these plans we've submitted to Ofwat, and Ofwat will effectively sign off on our plans. So I agree with what Councillor Birch said in terms of the questions that we've asked them today and the answers that they've not given us. But I think this is the strategic, what is the level of detail that you're going to do in the South Hams, because they keep talking about regional, and we're not really interested in what they're doing in Cornwall, let's be honest. We're interested in what they're going to do in the South Hams. And I think, harsh maybe, and I think we want this to be, that this first action in my mind is the bit that we then hold them to account on going forward. So I think we do need to give them enough time to be able to produce a detailed, this is, because what's going to happen, I can tell you now, is they'll put a plan that says we're going to fix Kingsbridge and we'll do that in 2026. And then it won't happen, it'll slip. So what we need to be doing, and they'll come up with a myriad of excuses like we had to prioritise Exmouth or whatever. That's what's going to happen. So we need to have some really clear, these are the things we're going to do in the South Hams, and we need to be holding them to account really over the next 5 years, because things will change.
Councillor Oldham.
Thank you, Chairman. Are we rushing these recommendations? I mean, I look to my more learned colleague at the back, Councillor Birch, maybe for some help on this. But you know, we've seen 7 recommendations that have appeared out of thin air. We haven't debated this. We haven't discussed it. We haven't gone into the minutiae of it. And realistically, we're not going to get a reply back from South West Water straight away. So may I recommend that we take some time out for us to really drill down on this? I don't want to lower this committee's expectation. I don't want to lower our work to the level of South West Water and do half a job. So I would really like to make sure that we get these recommendations right. And I feel that we'll be rushing it if we push them through today. And I'd like to know what members' opinion is on that.
I'm going to ask Councillor Birch's comments.
Yeah, just remember that this is a recommendation to council, that it does come to council, so it will be debated again at full council. Therefore, if any member thinks that it's missing or there's needs amending or whatever, the opportunity to do that will be at full council. So I don't think it can be accused of rushing this through, because there will be an opportunity for every member of this council to consider, not only consider it, but also put forward any amendments, additions, etc.
Councillor Hodgson.
I agree with what's just been said, but I just wanted to say a couple of things on that first question. I wonder whether that shouldn't be a proposed programme, but actually just a detailed programme. And the fact that we muddled up whether the XXX was a date by which all those things would have happened, or whether it was when we would get the report. I think we just need to make sure that it's clear there that that's the report date we're looking for, not it's May 2027
it's the
or something.
report date rather.
Yeah,
when
but it's not very obvious from the
things,
sentence, so we could end up with a ridiculous, misunderstanding. Yeah.
Okay, it's Councillor Bornham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I can't say I disagree with any of these specific points, but overall, I'm with Councillor Steele really in his comment, because I quite frankly don't think they answered anything properly in that meeting, and that's being polite. Their answers were evasive, sketchy. I mean, they have a 94-page document, which is their business plan. They didn't answer any of the pertinent questions in any respect whatsoever. So I think the action has to be somewhat stronger. And, I'm not a member of this committee, so I can't vote, but I would think that the council should at least invite their chief executive and insist their chief executive comes to see us, or, as per the previous motion, comes to an open meeting to discuss this, because these people are not empowered to answer these questions, or not able. I don't know what the answer is. We're not getting anywhere. If you had this meeting already a year ago,
well, we could always add a section 8, couldn't we? But we still request the CEO to come to our council to address members. We could answer that. Hang on. Sorry, David. Sorry, Jed. One sec.
Just to pick up the point about the date, if you move the by x-axis to SWWL requested to provide by the date, then it's clearer that's the date that they've got to provide the information by.
Also, just say instead of proposed, I'll say agreed. Agreed programme, because detailed. Okay, yeah.
Could I propose we address these in our next ONS meeting in October, which is November, isn't it? Which is still well before the council meeting in December, so we can have.
You could, but the only problem is I won't be here, which doesn't mean anything whatsoever. Doesn't mean anything whatsoever, but I won't be here. Councillor Yardy?
Thank you. I'm not quite sure the processes go through, but I don't want to lose a couple of the points that I made at the end there. One, would we consider that the CEO should stand down? Or we could conditionalise it, or whatever way you would like to do it. But I don't want to lose the point that I made, that there could be a situation in which the CEOs would consider standing down. And please feel free to conditionalise it. The other one is about the Environment Agency needing strengthening, and this is a recommendation that the enforcement activities of the Environmental Agency are strengthened. And ultimately, that they would potentially consider temporary nationalisation if necessary for poor performance. So those 3 points are not there, and I don't want to lose them. I see what Councillor John Birch said, that it could be brought in later, but at this stage I would like to keep them on the table, and you can decide whether or not you wish to include them or not in your final version.
We've got a slight time scale now. We've got about 2 minutes because Matt is about to leave. And we won't be quorate. So can I just say quickly, number 6, we could add into the lobbying of our MPs about strengthening the Environment Agency, because the only people who's got the power to do that is the government.
Good.
So we could include it in 6, which would deal with that, which I think is an important one we need to do.
Chair, can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
I think Councillor Steele's idea of the next committee is still ahead of full council. I will draft these with Amelia. We will send them out to the committee for consideration. It becomes the first agenda item on the next committee, and that can then go forward.
That is fine. The only thing I'm not happy with that is, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this publicly now. The idea of this council only having meetings on a Thursday is completely ridiculous, because we cannot put in meetings properly. We cannot put in meetings. This meeting and the 24th of October has been tried to be got into for months, and we haven't been able to pencil it in to a Thursday meeting. And that is not making it easy for, well, certainly not making it easy for me. And I think it's a ridiculous situation. If you're a councillor, you need to be able to be a councillor 24/7, which I think most of us are in any case. Well, you are. If you walk down the street, you can never say you're not speaking to someone. So that is fine. So you're going to have to bring this to the 24th of November meeting, 21st of November meeting. And that's when we'll decide these recommendations. Is everybody happy with that?
Not happy, but okay.
I'm not happy with it, but we'll have to do it. Councillor McKay, quickly, because we're going into being uncovered.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm not a part of this committee, I just wanted to encourage it to take account of Jed's, Councillor Yardy's recommendations, and they should. My belief is that the problem we're facing is a systemic problem, and that we need to have that reflected in those recommendations, if you can.
The only thing I disagree with that to be part of these recommendations is, I think Jed ought to bring that as a recommendation to full council in December as a completely separate issue. Here we're still trying to work with South West Water and the communities to try and work with them to actually do it. So I think that's a separate issue, and if we put that, all the other issues will get lost, because that's the main thing that we've discussed, or somebody will just pick that one out instead of all the others. So we're going to then bring this to the 21st of October's meeting for recommendation. Okay? Meeting?
We can add and change.
And you can add and change before then. Okay, thank you very much.